2 words, Revo Fitness. Here's a few more. Simple, 24/7, reformer Pilates, body scanners, massage chairs, squat racks, free weights, pin and plate loaded equipment, no lock-in contracts, no bullshit. All of that and more from just $9.69 a week. That's surprisingly affordable. Join now at Revo Fitness Morley or download the Revo Fitness app. RevoFitness.com.au or find the Revo Fitness app in the App Store.
Celebrating International Women's Day. That's the moment I shine. Yeah, with Natalie Locke.
Caitlin Bassett, welcome.
Thank you.
Now, of course, we know you as the former captain of the Australian Diamonds netball team. You played 102 matches, shot the winning goal in a World Cup. We all remember that in Singapore. You've had a glittering career, but you know, as a female athlete coming through the ranks, can I tell you my earliest memory of you playing netball?
Yes, please.
Was we're at Challenge Stadium, you were playing, I don't even know what the game was, but what I remember about it is that sitting behind me was your dad, your mum and dad, and your dad started telling us about how basically it was costing you to play representative netball. He was saying, you know, they don't make any money, and you don't have time to work, so they were having to support you to be an international level athlete.
Yeah, pretty much. I was pretty lucky. A lot of my early days of playing netball was when I was living at home still.
Yes.
So I was heavily reliant on my parents.
Yeah.
And then they bought an investment property in Thornley because we were living in Byford at the time. So it was a little bit closer to training, and they covered my rent, so I didn't have to pay rent. And that was huge for me because I wouldn't have been able to play netball and afford to pay for myself because I was studying at university as well at the time. I was working part-time here for a little bit as well.
Yeah, you were. You were part of our street team. Yeah.
So, I think I was heavily reliant on them. And that's why I guess now when I see some of the amazing things that female athletes get given to them, I just think I'm a little bit jealous, number one, because I'm like,
I mean,
wow.
it's tough, isn't it? Because when you look at it, it seems like they're getting everything now when you got nothing.
I know. But then I also appreciate, I guess, the opportunities that were given to me.
Yeah, and the fact that it's good to see progress in the right direction, obviously. But for the pioneers, is that what we call you?
Yes. And you know what? The ones before me, they were getting nothing. They were working full time. I remember when I was first playing for the Perth Orioles.
Yes.
I was in my last year of high school. Actually, down the road from here, we went to Perth Modern.
Yes.
And one of my teammates who would pick me up on the way through the training, she was a policewoman.
Yes.
And so she would work a full shift and then come and pick me up. And we would train later. It would be, after 6 o'clock. So those women could finish work, and then we would train, and then I would stay over her house afterwards. She would give me some lunch money the next day and drop me back off to school, and we'd pretty much just do the same thing all over again. So we had, someone, who was an insurance broker in the team. We had a teacher. We had someone who was studying medicine, and they were my role models growing up. I knew no better. I knew if I wanted to play elite sport that I had to have something else to support me outside.
Yes, and that there was sacrifice that went along with that. So obviously the sacrifice for you would have been a social life in there, was it? Like, how do you fit a social life into that?
Yeah.
You were 16 when you were playing for the Orioles, weren't you?
Yeah, definitely a social life. But I guess the flip side of that was I was getting experiences that my mates at school were never getting. So, on the weekend I would get to go to Sydney to play, Brisbane. I was playing against the best athletes in the world. I got to do some pretty awesome things, later on down the track when we got successful.
A lot of travel and stuff,
got to go to Melbourne Cup and going to the bird cage, and there's been a lot of really awesome things that have come along with it. But I guess, while my schoolmates were studying or doing their bits and pieces, studying for their TE, I was at netball training. So, there were some sacrifices. And
what was it like it was the formative years of a national netball competition, and you would be travelling. What sort of accommodation did they put you up in, and were you sleeping in bunk beds? What was going on?
We always stayed at the Holiday Inn. I remember really, really vividly, especially when we got to Melbourne, we would get our bags and we would walk across the road to the Holiday Inn, and it was the best thing because...
So you're staying at the airport?
Yeah, at the airport. We stayed at the airport. We'd get a couple of vans. If you had your licence, obviously you were allowed to drive one of the vans. That was not me at that stage. We were allowed to get room service when we first got to the hotel.
Ooh.
I'd always get the in-burger and chips. That was my go-to. And then after the game, because we had to spend an extra night because we were flying back to Perth, we didn't have a lot of budgets, so we were only allowed to have soup after the game.
So So you've flown over there.
Yeah.
You've played a game.
Yeah.
And you're like, you can only have the soup because that's all that we can afford.
Yeah, because we had to fly over the day early because we were coming from Perth.
So you were having an extra night's accommodation, so therefore
I
only
had to
soup
work
for
out.
you.
Yes, only soup for me. It was not like no soup for you, soup Nazi inside.
That is gobsmacking.
But you
really,
know,
when you say it out loud,
Yes.
it sounds ridiculous, right?
Yes. But you know what? It was either that or we had to provide our own food.
Yeah, okay.
And so...
Imagine that, having to pack your lunch
I
to go and
know.
fly interstate.
I know. So, I mean, I remember my first contract I signed, it was a really, really, I think it was $50 or something, a tiny amount of money. But in that contract, I got given 2 free pairs of shoes. And that was
Amazing.
mind-blowing for me because before that, Mum and Dad had to buy me
Yeah.
netball shoes. And
Yes.
I went through them like crazy because
Yeah, I
I was
bet you
playing
did.
indoor and outdoor netball at the time. So
Yes.
even just something as little as that made me really appreciate it. You know, when you got to the game and there was water there for you or there was lollies
Yeah.
and, you know, if you got fed after the game, they
You
were
got a
huge
bowl of
things.
soup.
Yeah, they were huge things. So I remember, you know, a few years later when we would get to put our order in and we'd have Zambreros after the game. That was huge. Like
that seemed like genuine progress.
Yes, and that to me was the steps to becoming a professional athlete was that, you know, we got more things given to us.
Yes.
We didn't have to pay as much. It wasn't about getting paid. It was more about what expenses I could get covered outside
Yes,
of that. So if I
yes.
could get given a fuel card, that was incredible. You know, if I could get some help with getting groceries each week, that
Yeah.
was huge for me as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is exciting
We
now.
should point out that you are not 87. We're not talking about the dark ages here. You're 37, so
No.
it's not that long ago.
No, so
that you could
2000
only have soup after the game.
2005 was my first contract. But you know what? We had women in our league who were pushing hard and they were lobbying for better for us.
Yes.
And, you know, the likes of a Catherine Cox, a Liz Ellis, who's, you know, now
Yeah, of
chair of
course.
Netball Australia.
Yes.
Sherelle McMahon. These ladies would, you know, when we had the opportunity, would go and hit up government and ministers and be begging for more money for
Yes,
us.
so they were the agents for real change and progress in the... Because it is, you know, it's always been one of the biggest participation sports numbers-wise, and yet not getting the funding that some of the men's sport were getting.
Yeah, so we were really lucky that we had those women who were role models for us, lobbying
Yeah.
for the greater good of everyone. They weren't just saying, "Hey, sponsor me, pay me some more
Yes,
money."
yes.
they were
They're
saying,
saying the
"Invest in our
broader
league,
sport,
yes,
yeah.
please. This is what this competition can become if you sponsor us, if you invest in us." And I remember when we first started, we're on ABC.
Yeah.
Steve Robilliard, he was the ABC announcer, and here in Perth, we would get one game a month televised. So one game a month, I would do my hair and make myself look slightly nice for the game.
An especially tight ponytail that day.
Huge. And then, you know, then we got onto Channel 10
Yes.
and then every single game was being televised.
Yes.
And, you know, now they're on Foxtel. And
Is it
it's just-
amazing now, because I know that you do commentate the Fever Games, to go along and see 13,000 people
Yes.
watching netball?
Yeah, it's huge. And even the fact that now, you know, I could be devastated that I wasn't earning huge amounts of money when I was playing.
Yes.
But now, because of the hard work that happened back then, there is a position for me to commentate.
Yes.
You know, back in the day, there was probably only a handful of commentators and they probably weren't getting paid at all. They
No,
were just doing it
no.
for the love of the game. So, you know, as the game has progressed, yes, the ones playing now are reaping the benefits and the rewards of all the hard
Yeah.
work that we did. But then also now there's an avenue for us to continue earning and to continue growing the sport from a different avenue.
Nova 937. Yeah. Celebrating International Women's Day.
2 words, Revo Fitness. Here's a few more. Simple, 24/7, reformer Pilates, body scanners, massage chairs, squat racks, free weights, pin and plate loaded equipment, no lock-in contracts, no bullshit. All of that and more from just $9.69 a week. That's surprisingly affordable. Join now at Revo Fitness Morley or download the Revo Fitness app. RevoFitness.com.au or find the Revo Fitness app in the App Store.
Nova 937. Yeah. Celebrating International Women's Day.
The other phase of your sporting career is that you've transitioned into AFLW, or you're in the process of transitioning. This is you're currently training for your first season. So, and that's going back basically. You're doing the same thing all over again. So this is playing Waffle W, so playing for Perth Football Club as a 37-year-old rookie. How are you finding that? So sharing facilities with the men and sort of real grassroots all over again.
Yeah, it's funny because I think waffle football is probably ahead of where state league netball is at the moment. For the first time ever, the females are getting paid player payments, which is really exciting. If you're playing state league netball in WA, you're not getting paid. So
that's amazing,
it's
isn't
quite
it?
funny. Yeah, there's a lot of, I guess, I feel like I'm going back in time a lot because I am working now and training, which is quite challenging. Being at work all day and then rocking up to footy training. That was just like what the older girls were doing when I first started playing netball. So it's been a bit of a full circle moment. But it's also exciting, like, to help grow another league, and I'm still deeply committed to helping grow female sport. It's funny, my transition out of sport wasn't a fantastic one. I got made redundant essentially from my job. I was told that there was not a position for me in any state team in the league, and the Australian Diamonds were happy to move on with another shooter. So when I finished up from netball, I was kind of at a bit of a loss. I didn't have this soft landing to go out on a high.
Sure, yeah, it wasn't an easy transition, was it? It was like a sudden jolt, really. Yeah.
I didn't finish my career with a retirement fund like some of the male athletes have. I didn't have a business that I had bought into or any of these things that, luckily a lot of male athletes have going on in their life. So it was kind of the things that kept me going at the start of my career. So having to work, having to study, I was kind of almost used to having to juggle and do that hard stuff. And so when I finished playing netball, I kind of just slipped back into that role. It was something I hadn't done for a decade and it was unfamiliar to start off with, but it was something that I was kind of used to. I understood about, working hard and networking and, doing the grind, because that was something that I always did when I first started playing. So it's funny now that I'm playing footy, and some of the younger girls coming through, they're like a decade plus younger than me, and they remind me of it all the time. But it's also exciting to see what they're coming into sport and what the baseline is for them now, which is huge. If they're fighting to get drafted to, AFLW league, if they get drafted, they'll be on a 70K contract for their first year, which is huge. Yeah. So there's definitely a lot of expectation and a lot of carrots dangling for them to go well and to train and play hard.
And that's happened in the space of, 10 years? That's amazing, isn't it? Even that. It's extraordinary to see the progress that's happened in AFLW in particular.
Yeah.
It's like it's been accelerated compared to learnt the lessons from other sports and sort of really used it to work for them. You've spent some time working in women's cricket as well.
Yes.
Talk us through that.
That was incredible. That was my transition out of elite netball, basically, was going into another sport. Yeah. And I never played cricket. I never bowled a ball. I liked watching it. I definitely was an avid fan growing up. And so the opportunity when I first finished playing netball was the border was closed here in Perth after COVID, so I couldn't move back. I had to stay in Sydney and get a job to afford my rent.
Yes.
And so I got a job with Cricket New South Wales as a player development manager. So basically my role was helping the female athletes there with their life outside of sport. So pretty much what I'd been doing for the last 18 years of my career.
Yes.
Like encouraging them to study, encouraging them to upskill, to build an identity away from cricket. So when something did happen to them, when they were at my stage, they could transition easily. And it was heaps of fun. Like netball was a little bit of a hard finish for me. And to go into another sport, I was a little bit like wary. But cricket really was a saviour. Like it was a whole new family, another team environment, which I really enjoyed. And females who embraced me and wanted to hear about my experiences and learn from me, and made me, I guess, sit back and go, I've done some pretty cool things the last 18 years, and these experiences that I've had, other people haven't had, and they don't have had to have had them. I can tell them about them and help learn from my mistakes. So that was really cool. I loved doing cricket.
What are the biggest lessons that you think professional sport has taught you?
I think it's a huge microscope on the fact that life isn't fair. Like the amount of career-ending injuries I've seen, the most beautiful, hardest working, most talented person in the team that just is cruelly cut down.
There just seems no justice in that, does there?
It's not. Yeah. And sport and life is not fair. And
that's
I think
right.
As soon as we stop expecting it to be, that's when we can kind of take a step back and navigate it a little bit easier. But yeah, I think that's been the one for me, is that when you expect it to be fair, you're going to be disappointed.
Yeah.
And you can really only control the things that you can do. So for me, that was always my attitude.
Yep.
And the work that I put in.
Yeah.
And so I think I've met some really awesome people through sport. I've got to see some really successful people, and success is not one cookie cutter shape.
Yes.
You can come from a really average background. You can have the richest parents in the world. You can be the most talented player in the world. You could have broken a leg. Everyone's path and journey is unique, and I think that's what's awesome about sport and stories that we can learn.
And that talent isn't everything, is it?
Talent sometimes is the worst thing.
It's the least of it. I mean, talent's great. It's great to have it. But without so many other factors, it's not going to get you anywhere.
Yes.
There must be like a litany of stories of very talented people falling by the wayside.
Yes. And I think as well, we expect everything to be easy. And as a kid, as soon as you experience a challenge or a setback, you want to stop because it's uncomfortable.
Yes.
But I think that's where elite athletes have always excelled, in that they won't take no for an answer.
That's why they're elite athletes.
Yeah, they get told no and they keep going. Yes.
Yeah.
So, and to be honest, that's helped me outside of sport in other areas of my life. Like, I'm fully understanding that on the football field, I'm not going to be very good. And
that's right.
And that's okay. I'm not stepping out there on the field expecting to be a Mimstrom straight away.
Yeah.
If that was the case, what have I been doing with the last 10 years of my life? Like, what a waste.
Yes, exactly. And I think you're right. A lot of people are too scared to try something because they know they're not going to be good at it straight away. And so therefore it's like, well, why would I bother? Or everybody has been in a situation where they weren't good at it. They just kept trying, kept learning, kept getting better, kept training hard and kept focused. And then with that comes the ability to do it well.
Yes. And that's why a good team environment and having the right support around you is so important.
Yeah. What do you reckon the secret is to that culture that builds that?
Embracing individuality.
Yeah.
I think no two people are the same, so no two people need to be treated the same.
Yep.
And just creating an environment where people feel safe to be themselves is a huge one. I think in a lot of elite sporting teams, sometimes it's like, this is the way or the highway, like getting good out. But the teams that have been successful for, consecutive amounts of years are ones that understand that different people on the team need different things, and it's okay to be flexible and adaptable. And I think there's more understanding of the emotion that's involved in sport.
Yes, it's more, coaching certainly is more psychology than it ever was, isn't it? Yeah. Well, Caitlin, you're an absolute legend. Your football career's just beginning.
Blossoming.
We'll look forward to seeing you in the ruck for the Perth Demons. Thank you for being a part of International Women's Day.
Pleasure.
Nathan, Nat and Sean is a Nova podcast. For more great comedy shows like this, head to novapodcasts.com.au. Nova.
2 words, Revo Fitness. Here's a few more. Simple, 24/7, reformer Pilates, body scanners, massage chairs, squat racks, free weights, pin and plate loaded equipment, no lock-in contracts, no bullshit. All of that and more from just $9.69 a week. That's surprisingly affordable. Join now at Revo Fitness Morley or download the Revo Fitness app. RevoFitness.com.au or find the Revo Fitness app in the App Store.